Hello, my name is Frank Donnelly. I'm the Geospatial Data Librarian at Baruch College, City University of New York, and the author of the book Exploring the U.S. Census, Your Guide to America's Data. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how you can quickly generate a census data profile from the American Community Survey using the data applications provided by the Missouri Census Data Center, which is up here at mcdc.missouri.edu. The MCDC provides census data not only for Missouri, but for the entire United States. I like to demonstrate this tool whenever I'm introducing people to the census because it's really easy to get a lot of census data for a particular place with just a few clicks. And if you're unfamiliar with the census, this is a good place to get an overview of the different variables and indicators and to just get a general sense for the kind of information that the Census Bureau collects. The profile tools, which are listed up here underneath this data tab, make it very easy for you to look up individual statistics, a lot of different statistics for one given place, that's what a profile is, and to create comparative profiles for up to 4 different places. And then you can download the results either in an Excel format if you're going to work with the numbers, or as a PDF file if you just want a readable reference. So these tools are really great for looking up statistics and getting a profile for an individual place, but these are not the kind of tools that you would use to download data in bulk, or if you're trying to build comparison tables, which are just a couple of variables from many different places. There are different tools for doing those kinds of tasks, some of them on this website, others on places like data.census.gov, which I've created another video for that you can check out. So let's see. If you want to look at the data profile tables, you come up here to the data tab. We're going to look at the American Community Survey profiles. So the ACS is the annual sample survey of the population. It captures detailed socioeconomic characteristics on a regular basis. Distinct or different from the 10-year census, which is conducted just every 10 years and collects just basic demographic information. If you want more information about the different data sets and what's contained in them, I suggest that you go back and look at the first video in the series that I created. The first video gives you talks about basic census concepts and breaks down the different data sets. Here, I just want to focus on using the tool and navigating just the specific ACS profile. But most of the applications here use a similar interface and kind of look and feel the same. So once you learn how to use one of these, you can basically use the others. Under this population menu, there are also links to profiles using the population estimates. But once again, check out the first video for information about the different data sets. For now, let's go ahead and take a look at the ACS profiles. So the first thing that comes up is a list of instructions here, which you should check out. And then down here, the first thing that we need to choose is the time period. This is something that I explain in detail in the first video, but just ever so briefly here. The American Community Survey is released as 2 different period estimates. There's a 1-year period estimate that is produced for all places in the United States that have at least 65,000 people. For all places in the United States, even bigger and smaller than that, the Census Bureau publishes a 5-year estimate. And the reason for doing that is that for small places, they can't publish a reliable estimate every year given the size of the sample. So instead, they collect 5 years of data and they produce these 5-year period estimates, which are meant to generally characterize this period of time. And then every year, they'll update these estimates by basically dropping out the oldest year and adding in the newest one. So you're generally going to use the 5-year period estimates. If you're working with any small geographies, if you're working with small places that have less than 65,000 people, or if you're comparing a lot of places. So for example, if you're looking at all of the counties in a particular state, many counties have less than 65,000 people. So if you're going to compare them all, then you have to use the 5-year period because that information won't be contained in the 1 year. As the last little note, the 3-year you can ignore. That's something that's no longer collected or actively maintained by the Census Bureau. So I'm going to choose the most recent 5-year period estimate, and I've selected it there. Now we're going to choose the type of area that we're going to look at. Let's say that we're interested in comparing Washington, D.C., Baltimore, and Annapolis, which is the state capital of Maryland. In the Census Bureau's geography, cities are called places. So I'm going to choose the places option. This is the Missouri Census Data Center, after all, so Missouri comes up first in the list. But if we want to get Washington, D.C., we'll choose District of Columbia. And we're just waiting here for the list to populate. Should be a relatively short list. There it is. So I basically click on it, and that adds it to my selections. Next, I want to get some places in Maryland, so we'll go to Maryland. The list that it gives us will be in alphabetical order. If it's a really long list and you don't want to have to scroll through the whole thing, there's a little link here that basically explodes the list with a bunch of check boxes that you can more easily mark off. But this will be relatively easy, so because Annapolis is at the top, and then we'll scroll down a little bit, and there is Baltimore City. So I've selected those areas over here. If I want to, I can select up to 4 areas in one profile. If I want to remove one, I can just hit the little X. And there are 4 different profile tables. I can just keep them all or uncheck ones that I don't want. Let's generate the report. And here we go. So the reason that this tool is pretty easy to use is that all of the data is just pulled from these 4 tables. These are the data profile tables that are produced by the Census Bureau, and they're designed to give you a lot of different variables for under these large specific subjects. So you can get a broad statistical overview of different places. The columns here are the places that we selected in the order that we selected them. And if we want to jump to different sections, there are these shortcuts up here, but we'll just scroll through here and take a look. So the demographic indicators, here we have total population broken down into age brackets, and then different kinds of age categories there. We have broken down by age and sex. We have the population broken down by different racial groups, by Hispanic or Latino ethnicity. And then under that, we're done with the demographic section, and now we're in the economic section. So total number of households counted within specific income brackets. And I suggest you just kind of scroll through here and take a look, and you'll get a really good sense of the kind of information that's collected in the American Community Survey. There are a lot of different indicators. So employment status, how people get to work, their occupation, the industry they work in, whether or not they have insurance. Now we have social indicators, basically how are people related to one another, are they married or not, grandparents, are people enrolled in school, what's their educational attainment, are they veterans, disability, where people lived, so world, region of birth, language, and then the last table pertains to housing, so this is all information about housing units as opposed to people. The number that are occupied, that are vacant, when the building was built, the type of heating fuel. There's a lot of different information in here that you should go ahead and explore. As we've scrolled through this, though, you probably noticed that some of these numbers are printed in bold, some of them are in kind of a regular font, and then others are in a very light font. That's because that these numbers, these are not actual counts, these are estimates from the American Community Survey. Each estimate basically represents the midpoint of a possible range of values. So for example, we're 90% confident that the population that was white was 280,469 people somewhere between 2014 and 2018. Now if we hover over that number a little bit, you'll see a little tooltip that pops up. Let me just see if I can get it back. There we go. This tells us what the margin of error is for this estimate. So this estimate represents the midpoint of a range, and the actual margin of error is going to be, in this case, 0.68% higher or lower than this. That means that the white population in DC might be as low as 278,000, or it could be as high as 282,000. So these estimates don't represent an exact count, they represent an estimate with a possible range of values. The numbers that are printed in bold, these are estimates that are considered to be pretty reliable. Numbers that are in normal font are a little less reliable. They're moderately reliable. So the American Indian and Alaska Native population in DC, plus or minus, this estimate is plus or minus about 25%. If the number is really light, then that means that this is a really unreliable estimate. So this population in Annapolis could actually be 100% lower or higher than this number. So it could be double or it could be 0. So this is a nice feature of these profiles in that they basically kind of give you a little bit of a heads up or a warning about how reliable the estimate is. The smaller the group of people, or the smaller the geography is, the more unreliable the estimate is going to be. The only way we can get a better estimate is if we look at a larger geography or at a larger group of people. The other thing you may have noticed is that next to some of the column headings here, there's a little chart. If I click on that chart, this is a really nice way of getting some graphs. So in this case, I checked on age, and each of these bars are the number of people and the age brackets for the different cities that we were looking at. So this is a pretty nice feature. You can come over here and actually print or save the chart. If we go back here, different variables are going to have different kinds of charts. So for example, on the race variable, here we're getting a pie chart instead, and here's DC, and here's Annapolis, and here's Baltimore, and we can compare them. One thing you should notice for the race data is that Hispanic or Latino in the census is not counted as a race. It is actually a separate ethnicity, so that everybody has a race, and then everybody has a Hispanic or Latino ethnicity. Either they are Hispanic or they are not. For more information about this, once again, you can kind of look back to the first video. And then there are other tables here, for example, Hispanic or Latino by race, that break that information down a little bit further. If you want to download or save any of this data, there are a couple ways of doing that. There's a PDF version if you just want to get a readable format. Or up here, if you want the actual numbers to crunch, you can export the data to Excel. Let me just open it up here so you can take a look. And there you have it. So when you download it, you're basically going to get not only the estimate, but the margin of error for the estimate and a percent total as well. All right, so there you have it. That is the ACS Profile tool from the Missouri Census Data Center. A nice place to quickly get some profiles for different places and to look up basic statistics. If you want to learn more about the census, you can check out my other videos in this channel. You can also check out my book, Exploring the U.S. Census, which is your guide to America's data, a researcher's guide to learning about the different data sets and learning about different sources and software for working with the data. All right, there you have it. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.